Everyone. It's Monday at 6 o'clock p.m. My name's Brian Burke. I'm an attorney with Sam Shihab and Associates. With me is the man himself, Sam Shihab. Hello, Sam.
Hey, Brian, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. We have a whole lot of good content for tonight. We have our news. We have so much immigration news going on. There's the Build Back Better Act. There's the January Visa Bulletin. And there's some interesting stuff about Dropbox stamping out there as well. We have a great substantive topic, which is what to do after you get your green card, a nice upbeat one. And we're going to have our usual fun Q&A session. So everybody, thanks for tuning in. Get your questions ready, and we'll be back in a minute. You know, Sam, we discussed that I should shrink you down before I play that video, and I managed to forget again. Oh well.
Build Back Better Act, right?
Yeah.
A lot has happened, but I'm going to tell you something I haven't told you before.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you that the Build Back Better Act will be back full force in January, and probably before March we have this new law for employment immigration up and running. But before, that's my prediction. Now I will bet you the normal $1 on it if you want to take my bid. That's on the uptick on the good news, because we definitely need good news. But right now, there's a very serious setbacks.
Yeah. So, well, there was kind of two setbacks. One on, I think it was Thursday. The other one on Sunday. On Thursday, the parliamentarian, I believe it was on Thursday. The parliamentarian said none of this immigration benefits for the undocumented are capable of being included in this bill, at least in the current version. And she said no, right? And that was bad, and that threw all sorts of questions about whether they can pass anything at all. And then there was Sunday.
Well, before we go to Sunday, let's talk about the parliamentarian. First of all, I couldn't find the text. Is the text released? Because
I've been unable to find it too. I used my best Google foo and I couldn't track it down.
Yeah. So the text was not released when the news were released. So the exact text were not. But however, a quote from her was released, and has to do with the illegal immigration problem. Not necessarily commenting on the legal immigration. We haven't heard any comments on the legal immigration.
Agreed.
But that's where we at. No bad news on the legal immigration, but obviously devastating blow on the illegal immigration.
Yeah, I mean, what on the illegal immigration front, I believe the parliamentarian said, you know, this policy looks substantially like your last two proposals, unless I don't see any sort of way of getting it there. So that's really the logic was.
Yes, and just full disclosure, I am on vacation, and that's why I am in my nice shirt, relaxed mode here, guys. And Brian is in the office doing the hard work.
In the office, yes. In the flesh, with my shiny good camera, yes, sir.
And thank you to Brian and my team in Columbus for allowing me to be on vacation, because they do an amazing job and moving forward and helping our clients address any and all their concerns. But back to business. So that's the first blow. Parliamentarian said, "No way, Jose," and everybody is in a shock about that. But obviously, the Build Back Better is a lot more than immigration, and there's a lot more concerns. There's a lot of interest and momentum in moving it forward.
Yes.
Which leads to the second piece of news.
Yes. So I don't know if anybody out there hasn't heard the news yet, but I think maybe I'll play my video clip of what happened. What Joe Manchin of West Virginia said this evening. Let's get that clip queued up here real quick. There I am. There you are. And I'm going to replace me with a clip of Joe.
If I can't go home and explain it to the people of West Virginia, I can't vote for it. And I cannot vote to continue with this piece of legislation. I just can't. I've tried everything humanly possible. I can't get there.
You're done. This is a no.
This is a no on this legislation. I have tried.
Well, Sam, pretty clear.
Well, it's clear it's a no the day he said it. It doesn't mean a no next week. These are politicians, but it's clearly he got pushed hard to the corner on other issues, and he was not comfortable going forward. So he basically, I guess, nuked it
Yeah,
as
I
it
mean,
stands.
I've listened to what he said. He said he had concerns regarding inflation, national debt, and COVID, and just uncertain times right now. He couldn't support a bill that does so much, essentially.
Right.
So,
So I think there's a couple things based on what I've read today that he has communicated clearly to the administration that he will not support. It's about child credit,
yes,
and I think some reducing the cost a little bit to like maybe a little bit less, make it a little bit more, less expensive, and he may get back on board. So they're gonna have basically. He said, "I'm done, my way or the highway," and I think it's gonna be his way.
yeah. See, you make a good point, Sam. Because I'm disappointed that we've reached this point because the chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And not to say that Joe Manchin is weak, but the vote is a chain, is a 50 link chain, and basically, if he doesn't agree to something, that vote's not going to happen. They need all 50 Senate Democrats, and the way the negotiations, I presume something like this should go is, Joe, you have us over a barrel. We need your vote. Whatever the Build Back Better Act becomes, it has to be something that Joe approves on. So tell us what that is so we can make it happen, And ultimately, that clearly hasn't happened. And that's resulted in that clip of Joe Manchin saying no,
Yes, and I know I'm fading in and out here on the internet. I'm seeing it myself, and I apologize. Obviously, I'm in a hotel, and that's the service they provide. So my apologies to that. But in any event, yes, I agree with you. I think the Build Back Better is going to get even better, and they're going to get rewritten. I think there's a Wall Street Journal article today that says it's being rewritten today as we speak already. So they've moved on. It ain't going to happen before Christmas, and he is going to take it easy. I think he wants this rash of COVID to pass through and gets behind us, hopefully, and then he has a little more clarity on what the damage is, and then maybe be willing to vote for a different form of it. But the immigration piece, the legal immigration piece, at least to our knowledge, is not removed. He clearly stated he will support it. The parliamentarian did not shoot it down. We do not have this information. I mean, I cannot confirm that she did not shoot it down, but I can confirm that we don't have any information, or there's any negative information out there saying that the legal immigration piece is not acceptable. And Manchin has said that if the parliamentarian supports it, he supports it. So I say we have the path. The path has narrowed.
You're entirely right. I mean, what he says today, they can rewrite their bill, and it's still a budget reconciliation bill, and they can still pass it with 50 votes. It's a matter of, again, they have to come back and say, please, Joe, please get back on the team, and we'll give you something you can vote on in good conscience, in your good conscience.
Yeah, the renewable energy piece, obviously, West Virginia is a cold country.
Yeah.
Renewable energy investment, I think, scares the heck out of them. I think if it has a component of free training, of course, we're digressing from immigration, but if it has a component of retraining coal workers or money for states, if somebody is impacted in the next 10 years due to unemployment, due to changing the direction on energy consumption in this country, some kind of a protection. He obviously, people say that he's, and I can't confirm or deny, but that's what I read, that he's also personally conflicted a bit because all his personal investment is in coal. So there's a lot going on there. So, I mean, I think there's room to negotiate. So I think we have a path. The path, it was a 3-lane highway, and now it is 1 lane with no edge stripes. It's and no lights. It's in the dark. But it's a path, and that's what we need. We need a path.
When I heard this news, well, there's two questions that crossed my mind. Are one, is it possible that there could be another budget reconciliation bill? And you're right, they can just rewrite the Build Back Better Act, and there's still a version of it that can get passed. The other thing that crossed my mind is, can this be picked up? Can this be picked up down the road? Can they pick this up and put it in another bill? And the answer is yes. Well, no, they can.
I don't think so. Well, they can, but I don't think there's
60
really
votes.
energy for it. Plus the. I mean, let's just put it that way. We have a divided Congress, Brian.
Well, yes. So 60 votes is the question. However, I think, the question is, and Sam, my YouTube short for today was, the question in the end is if this is a bipartisan issue, do you think there's bipartisan 60 votes worth of support for immigrant visa recapture?
The short answer is yes, but there is a 60 vote for support. But the bigger question for me is this legal immigration legislation is going to be a rider on something else. It's not going to go in by itself.
Yeah.
It's always going to be with something else bigger, more important, and this is going to be like right there riding on its coattail, right? It's right in its windstream, right? And it slips.
That is how politics generally works. You can't really get it. There's no such thing as a single issue bill. Yeah.
Yes, and therefore, the question becomes: what are you driving? What's in front of it? What's driving it? And is there enough momentum for the main issue to have the vote? So people say, yeah, but put that in there and let's push it through. So it's a lot more complex than that. We got now an opportunity for a 51 vote with the vice president breaking the tie on this bill, rewrite it, get the nation on board, whatever he wants.
I think we're on the same page then. I mean, he says what he says today, but it is possible for them to say, we need this and come together and get it done.
It's Biden's signature legislation. It's going to get rewritten and it's going to shrink even more, but there's no indication that the legal immigration will go away. So stay tuned. It will pass in March of 2023. So don't lose hope, gentlemen.
All right. Well, Sam, the next current event we wanted to talk about was the January Visa Bulletin. It is here.
The January Visa Bulletin without Mr. Charlie Oppenheim, who people have a love-hate relationship with him, but it's easy. It's easy to be critical. It's easy to be critical. There is no question the system of counting numbers that they do is a incredibly primitive that they has used, and it's maybe it was good 20 years ago, 30 years ago, but not in the complexity of immigration laws and the expectation that we have. So hopefully the new person coming in will be able to do a little bit more creative mathematics.
Yeah, so I have to mention that, they also are taking the dates for filing this month versus in lieu of the...
There was dates for filing. There was dates for filing before.
Correct. So I guess that's to say they're continuing to accept the dates for filing right now, which is, for example, compared to say last year, it was something different. It was not what we expected.
Yes.
And what's really interesting about that is in one of his last statements to AILA, the American Immigration Lawyers Association, we got the impression that they wanted to see how many they would get before they moved things forward at all. And ultimately, my notes say that they moved EB2 final action dates for India ahead 2.5 months, and they're leaving it on dates for filing. It means that's saying, give me more cases. That's saying I want more, as I interpret it. What's your take, Sam?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Well, I mean, they're accepting date for filing anyways, right?
Yeah.
The final action date is behind the date for filing, so it doesn't really change the cutoff on what cases they will accept.
Well, they did move the EB2 dates ahead, so
the final action moment.
Yes, final action. So that means more people. Well, yeah, I get your point. They moved the final action dates were already up there, but
so
again,
there's no movement. There's no movement on. There are no more people filing, but there are more people potentially getting green cards.
That's
the best way
a
to
fair
put it.
take. I mean, when I hear the part about the dates are finally be open, I see them. We're holding the door. If you haven't gotten your case into us, we're holding the door open because we'd like more cases coming in because we feel like we have the space for them. That's my interpretation of it.
I think they have enough cases in the pipeline. And they are going, unfortunately, there is no indication that they are going to handle the number of cases. And it appears we may be heading into more wastage this year, unless obviously Congress passes laws to preserve those green cards into the future, which I believe it was in this bill. But I think this month visa bulletin has to do with the fact that they have no idea what's going on. Charlie's gone, and they're saying, okay, let's look. I mean, I don't want to put words in people's mind, but let's look like we've done something without doing something, because without changing the filing date, nothing has changed. The filing date is the filing date. So, and that's the date they're accepting. So
they don't expect a new burst of cases. Sure. Yeah. Same old people who are able to.
No change. So fine. They're not ready. Hopefully in February they're ready to start moving these visa bulletins in a way that is a bit more logical.
But more cases. Sure.
But we'll wait one more month. We've been waiting.
I mean, they had, again, what Charlie's last statement was is they want to, maybe they'll start moving it forward. I think it said April is when they'd have a better idea of what kind of volume of cases they received. So
yes. Sounds good. So visa bulletin is out, wonderful. And then what else we got there on the updates?
Well, there's the update on the Dropbox stamping, where they basically, for a while, they had extended the look back period for how old your visa could be to be eligible, and it wasn't 4 years. And unless they change something, it's going to revert back to 1 year.
Right, and that's a State Department decision, right?
Yeah.
And we don't anticipate them to go back to 1 year. We anticipate them that they're going to release an extension, but we haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, so it's something to keep an eye on, but I don't consider it a crisis at this point.
Right. So, well, it's coming up soon, so we will know soon.
Yeah.
All right. So wonderful. So it's current events. So now we go into substantive law, and we've done something a little different there this time. Brian, can you explain that to us? We threw in a blog on top of it, right?
Oh yes. So yes, let's check out our blog. So we have a website. Our website has a blog, and our blog conveniently has a
Yes. So this blog is we've done is we've released a blog along with the topic discussion, things to consider after your green card is approved. It's in the blog, and you will be able to see that when you go to our website. Back to you, Brian.
There it is. So check it out. Oh, there's a link. Yeah, there's the links right in the YouTube description. I don't know whether I heard that from you guys, from you, Sam.
Yes.
So
yes.
What is our topic then? We like positive topics. Positive topics are fun for us, right? And it also poses kind of new questions that we don't usually get during these streams. And it's really, what happens? What do you do after you get your green card? What happens after you get your green card? What are your legal implications after you get your green card? What are these? It's, hey, you still have to stop. You still have to think about immigration law after you get your green card, don't you, Sam?
Yes, and it is about understanding what you can and cannot do, more like most of those things, what you should and should not do, right? But there's few things that are important, like change your address, and preserving your green card. But we're going to go through employment consideration and a few other things. So what's the first thing we're hitting here? Employment consideration, Brian?
Yeah, employment considerations, like what employment what's your employment supposed to be like after you get your green card? So
the first one is, when must I join my employer sponsor, right? Before, during, after, what's a good time to join my employer sponsor in the green card application? Now, who is this employer sponsor, Brian, that you're referring to?
Well, it's either your I-140, petitioner, Or if you've submitted a supplement J, it's going to be your supplement J sponsor, your substitute sponsor.
So if you've been working for them all along, you don't have an issue, right?
Yeah,
On the
sure.
question of joining, so we're going to have a different question about leaving. That's a different question. So on the question of joining, when would you want to join the employer sponsor?
Sure. So the absolute last, minute to do it is when your green card is approved in your hands. That's when you sort of promise to do it. However, and we are generally talking about after green card approval. There's an argument to be made that you should be doing it before then, because this is something that USCIS is interested in. They want to, they call people in for interviews for this purpose because you're not with your green card employer.
So let's talk about you didn't join them at all.
You could have some difficult questions to answer. I mean, the USCIS officer who's probably bringing you in for an interview to discuss this issue has to believe that you have intended to, in good faith, take this job offer, right?
Let's say there's no interview.
There's no interview. Well, you're supposed to be joining that employer as soon as you receive your green card.
So
that's it.
If they don't, what are the ramifications for not joining the employer after the green card is issued?
Well, so we should probably talk about what it means when you get your green card briefly. When you have a green card, your green card says you're allowed to live wherever you want in the United States, work for whomever you want in the United States indefinitely, right? And however, your whole green card process, your I-140, your supplement J, was premised upon your employer issues you a job offer and you're agreeing to take it. So that's what it's all about. If you don't, is the government going to knock on your door immediately and deport you from the country? No. However, they could start asking you some questions.
So in terms of, I think people confuse the question of what the law expects of you and whether or not the government is enforcing that aspect of the law.
Yeah.
And what the government does in immigration law, as long as I have been doing it, which is quite some time, they shift focus. They jump from one area to another because there's so many infinite number of enforcement points in the immigration process.
It can't be everywhere at once.
Yeah, so what they do is they just jump for focus from one area to the other, and there's some other areas that they've never focused in on, and there's few areas that this year they surprised us that they're focusing on. So that we're not answering whether or not the government is going to catch you, because right now there is no enforcement in this area, so you understand.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of the government going after anybody if they don't join the employer, and I haven't seen that happening in a very, very long time. The only time we've seen it in the past coming up is when you're dealing with citizenship application, when they look at your history in the last 5 years and they see that you did not work for the employer one day, and then it may come up. So there's no enforcement. So let's get this thing clear. There's no enforcement in this area right now. It doesn't mean tomorrow things will not change and there will be enforcement, but today there isn't. Now, what does the law require you? The law requires you to be employed with this employer at the time the green card is approved.
Yeah.
Or a very reasonable time thereafter. What's a reasonable time? Few days, few weeks, maybe. I don't think it'll be a big deal, but beyond that, it's a legal vulnerability, not an enforcement vulnerability right now.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about. You are expected to join the employer because it's a job offer, and that's what the law says. And if you've moved and filed a supplement J, it's with the supplement J employer. Now, having said that, when can I leave my employer is a different question, and I think that one needs to be discussed probably exactly at the same time we're discussing when can I join, because they're really kind of the other side of the same coin, right? Yeah. And when you can leave your employer, the answer is there is nothing in the law that specifically gives you a date. So let's get that out of the way. There's nowhere in the law written that says you must be with the employer 180 days.
Yeah, that's the popular one people talk about. The 6 month, the quote unquote 6 month rule is not a rule. It just kind of maybe a good idea that's derived from the adjustment portability rules.
but there's no law that exists.
Yeah.
And there are situations that leaving the employer within very short period of time is justifiable.
Yeah. My classic one, Sam, I think of, termination, if that employer, finds some circumstances change, a week after your green card's approved, how can you be punished really, wonder what logical ground should you be punished for leaving your employer when they can say, I can't offer it to you anymore,
Right.
if something changes.
Exactly. And I've had people who were terminated practically 24 hours after they were approved.
Yeah.
From very large companies. I mean, these companies now have been swallowed by other companies, but from companies that had, 100,000 employees, big companies, and they did layoffs after the green card was approved. What can you do? There's nothing you can do about it. I mean, obviously, you keep your green card. Another scenario is you discover the day after you got your green card, you discover that the employer is engaged in improper conduct. Something questionable, you feel ethically unable to do your job. Do you leave because of that? That's justifiable.
Yeah.
Company filed for bankruptcy a week after you join. You leave, right?
Yeah. So what we're really talking about is circumstances. It's not a clear yes or no answer when you can leave your employer at a specific time. We really think about what was in your heart. What were you intending to do? Or did you come into this green card intending to do what you were supposed to do? Take that job your employer offered, you intended to take it, and that was in good faith. I mean, Sam, the question is, can you take that green card, Sam, when you're not intending to join that employer, when you're planning to leave them immediately after,
If you accepted an offer the day before you went for a green card adjustment interview, and then you have handed them a supplement J, or you confirmed the supplement J, and you told them, sir, yes, I am planning on working for the employer.
Yeah.
You potentially have a legal problem. Again, it's not a high enforcement area right now, but we talk law here. You are potentially
Well, it looks like I may have lost Sam temporarily. We discussed this contingency. He might be able to join back in. But what Sam and I have been discussing is, ultimately you're thinking about, in your heart, in your mind, in your soul, you have to really be intending to take that permanent offer of employment in the United States from your sponsoring employer. And if your sponsoring employer does not cough up that offer, if you don't intend to follow through with that, if you're not acting in good faith, you can have a problem. As Sam said, they're not really enforcing that right now. It's not an enforcement area. And, your question might come to mind is, how would anybody know? Don't count the government out. There's Sam calling on the phone. And Sam Shihab, how are you?
I'm doing good, Brian. Can you hear me?
Well, I can hear you, and my only question is, can our audience still hear you? I'm going to turn up our local phone here, and if anybody can let us know in the chat if they can still hear Sam through the phone. But
I can't restoring my connection on the internet here, so I'll be in very soon.
Okay.
Just keep going, Brian.
All right. So I'm gonna keep it going, and I'll see you soon, Sam. Bye bye. So let's keep it going. So with this explanation that Sam that we gave there, what's in your heart, what's in your mind, there is all these related questions that come up. It's what can you do for your employer? Well, the work you're supposed to be doing for your employer is what is set forth in your labor certification in your offered employment. If you can, the bottom line is you're supposed to be taking the job that's offered in your I-140 petition in your supplement J. If you can't do that, you might have a problem in your green card. Now we get into more technical questions. Hey, there he is. Sam's back. Sam, sir, welcome back.
Good to be back. All right. So we talked about joining. We talked about leaving the employer. I think that's a very important discussion because a lot of people get confused about it. And I think I want to kind of summarize that so people are clear on this. There's no law that tells you, okay, except that there's law about good faith. That means you intend to join the employer when you file that green card, which is the supplement J employer or the original employer, whoever you're with, or whoever that you've represented is going to be the employer on this application. Is that clear? You want to add to that, Brian?
No, that's a lot like what I said when I realized you had left. So I think we're on the same page.
Perfect. On the departure, also there is no law except good faith and except that you have to attempt to be with that employer, again in good faith, and there's a lot of circumstances can dictate earlier leaving.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Now,
yeah.
Why do we? If there's no enforcement, why do we talk about it? A lot of people say,
I can tell you why. For folks from India, they're waiting, a decade plus to get a green card. It is their life in the United States on the line. And I'm not going to tell people, like you said, Sam, it's not an enforcement priority right now, but I'm not going to tell people that's never going to be an issue,
Precisely.
It's your life.
It is not an enforcement priority, but there's clearly an issue that you must understand. You need to be on the safe side. You must make sure that you cross the T and dot the I, and not dismiss it as a silly little thing. We had this recent case. I don't want to talk about case law dealing with Facebook green card, where certain practices that we all have done for the last 20 years on labor certification, and all of a sudden there's a court case that says, Facebook, you did this and you broke the law and other aspects of the law, and now everything is changing and now how we do things, right?
Yeah.
But everybody quietly knew that there was a vulnerability in the law, but we don't want for that to happen to anybody. Understand the law, follow the rules, and the story.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So we've been on the employment considerations for a while. Perhaps we moved to something a little bit different.
Yes.
The preservation of your green card. People are very excited about your green card, and they call it permanent residence. Sam, is permanent residence truly permanent?
It's not permanent. And by the way, we're hitting 6:30, so we're going to jump on that and answer questions.
Yes.
We're going to speak to a schedule. However, no, permanent until it is not permanent.
Yeah. So basically, it is possible through one of the common pitfalls of permanent residence is that you can lose your permanent resident by leaving the country, essentially. If you're a permanent resident, we're going to talk more about hearts and minds and what's in your brain. It's you have to intend to live in the United States permanently, and if you abandon that intent, you potentially, arguably, you do abandon your permanent residence, and the government can question you on that. And people always talk about, here's another 6-month rule. People think that if I just spend less than 6 months outside the United States, I can abandon I'll keep my permanent residence. If I come back to the United States, 1 week every 6 months, I won't abandon my permanent residence. That's a bad way of thinking.
Wrong. That's not the law.
Yeah.
Right.
You have to intend to be a permanent resident of the United States, and even if you've left the country, even if you're last in the country for a week, if the customs folks, if they see a record that you're spending all your time outside the United States, they can question your permanent residence and start proceedings to, revoke that.
Yes. So you must understand that it is not a time thing, although there are times, for example, if you're outside the United States beyond 1 year, you're no longer capable of traveling back to the United States legally, because everybody has a story about his cousin or his friend or his cousin's friend or his friend's friend that was outside the United States for 12 years and then came back, flew in, handed his green card. Nobody asked him a question. He walked in. Well, it's not the law.
Yeah.
This is not the law, and this person is vulnerable. So what's the law is if you're outside the United States for more than 1 year, you have to go through a process through the consulate. They have to decide whether you get to keep that green card or you get to hand it back to them. So that's one thing that you have to keep in mind. And then there are certain things that you can do that will absolutely get you in trouble, and we're going to mention them quickly. One is filing your taxes as a non-resident alien.
Yeah.
There's a big advantage if you're working overseas, or your employer, if you're working for an American employer overseas, by the way, that's a positive thing. You can explain it as long as you're not staying too much outside the U.S.
Yeah.
But if you file as a non-resident alien your taxes, you just basically gave up your green card. So it's almost automatic. It's a presumption that you surrendered your green card. So that's one of the big things that you have to do.
Yeah.
Anything else we have touched on, Brian?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna run through a couple of these, which I like real quick. You know,
Yes.
You remember you're not a citizen yet, so you can't vote. You can't register to vote because remember, as a permanent resident, you can still be removed from the country. It is not permanent, so those are things that can get you in serious trouble and get you removed from the country. On the subject of that, you know, there's still deportable offenses. You know, you can still be deported if you're a permanent resident. On that front, there's the AR-11. You are required to file that AR-11 to update your address. Everybody who's not a citizen is required to do so. And if you fail to do that, you can still have some trouble.
Within 10 days.
Yeah, within 10 days. So those are the kind of like the real fun little considerations, Sam. But before we move on to those questions, there's two topics, you know, I want to touch on very briefly. The fun topics,
Yes,
the positive topics, you know,
yes, sir.
it's what to look forward to as a permanent resident. Number one for me is naturalization. You know, it's the employment-based immigrants can apply for citizenship after 5 years, or 5 years, and they can apply 90 days before they hit that 5-year mark. So it comes up sooner than you think.
Yes, and for you have to become familiar with the laws of your country of origin, whether or not that you may have to surrender your U.S. citizen, your foreign citizenship. The U.S. doesn't require you to do that, but your mother country or original citizenship country may do that. So you need to learn about it. Back to you, Brian.
Yeah, and the last one, which is we sort of want to bring up, is you can start sponsoring people for green cards as a permanent resident. You know, that's sort of family-based immigration. You know, you can do sponsor green cards for spouses and unmarried children and adult sons and daughters. So it's something. So that's a complicated process, and kind of you want to talk to the family immigration version of Brian and Sam, which is Brian and Sam at a different time. We do that sort of thing too. But it's something to look forward to. And as a U.S. citizen, once you achieve U.S. citizenship, you can really sponsor a whole lot more people, and odds are you can do it a whole lot faster too. So it's positive stuff. We got very much stuck on the changes of employer and not getting in trouble.
Because it's an important topic, and it deserves the time. And we can probably spend more time on this and other.
I can spend more time on all of these.
Yes. So 6:38, and we're moving on answering questions, right, Ryan?
Yeah. So let's see what we got and keep them coming, guys, because we always get
a piece of music for us. That little video.
Oh, I have something to show the good people.
All right. Love it. First question, Brian.
Let's see what we got. So, we have all sorts of questions. We have commentary too. The number one, first one here is, are you guys doing it virtual day? We are. I can reach my hand this way. I can reach my hand that way. You can't see me waggling it around on Sam's screen. So Sam explained already. He is.
I got to hit him on the other side. Brian. Here we go.
Okay. Well, we're not known for our humor, but yes. So let's see what we got here. So hi, Sam and Brian. So good to see you guys again. I heard Department of State has waived interview for green card at the consulate. Do you think they'll be doing it for employment-based cases here in the U.S. Too?
I think there's a big push for that. No question. We haven't heard that they've done it yet. The wheel here moves slow. Brian, do you have any information on that?
Well, generally speaking, there's lots of people get their green cards approved for employment-based green cards right now without an interview. only certain people get pulled in for an interview right now. I've been to plenty of. There's lots of new green card cases pending out there, and I've been to plenty of green card interviews recently. But I've had for every one person who I get an interview notice for, I probably get 5 approvals without them ever having to visit a USCIS office at all.
Yes, absolutely. The other thing, by the way, we haven't talked about in the current event, I'm going to throw it here, we'll probably bring it up more detail next time, is that obviously premium processing AED is coming. And that's a fantastic thing. It was released in the Federal Register, and I knew there was something missing. But it's coming soon, so that's great news. But back to waiving the interview. We were in an era before Trump wanted to interview every green card.
Yeah.
And that is gone. That doesn't exist now.
Yeah. It was a fun time for the immigration attorney who likes to go to interviews, but
Yeah, but that's gone, and now they're selective. But I think they should probably interview less, in my opinion. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So next one we have from a regular viewer here, Sweet Seller. So it says, based on Charlie's statement about reassessing the upgrades in April, would there be an EB2 retrogression in April? So it depends. It honestly depends. So in Charlie's statement, everybody was sort of left with the impression that there wouldn't be, that they're just going to take cases for a while and things aren't going to move much. They moved the EB2 forward quite a bit so they could see what cases are out there to get an idea as to what kind of volume they're going to get. So it could be anything, honestly. If they don't get as much as if they get more than what they need, retrogression to cut off the flow. If they have less, it's move it forward. But retrogression is was suggested to be a possibility there, and then it would continue moving forward later in the year. So it's the sort of thing where it remains to be seen.
And I'll just add a couple words on my end. In my opinion, given the fact that the cases, the EB2 didn't move forward too much, I don't think it's going to be much regression because there's really not much room to retrogress. I mean, if you moved it 2 months, wait, you're going to retrogress it 2 months? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, I mean, we've agreed at this point. We talked about crystal balls. I don't have one in front of me. That it's really hard to interpret the visa bulletin because they don't get great information in the Department of State. But I mean, again, because they're taking dates for filing, that to me says, they're still holding open the door and they want more cases right now. So, I mean, we view these things on a month-by-month basis anymore because the predictions of the Department of State, what they say has been, let's say, not misleading to us, but it's maybe not the best, working with the best data.
Agree.
Yeah. So I'm going to keep on moving it along here. This is from Sneha Mehta. So I'm a green card holder and planning to work for a U.S. company for 4 months from India. When I enter the U.S. at a point of entry, does CBP ask if I work for 4 months abroad for a U.S. company? Thanks. So this is kind of really an on-point question, Sam, about what we've been talking about today.
It's an excellent question. I'll give my version of it, and Brian can give his version, so you get 2 answers. So there's no specific question they ask, have you been working abroad for 4 months? As a matter of fact, if you're gone for 4 months and it's your first time outside the United States for 4 months, they may not even ask you any question. But let's assume they get suspicious and now they want to know more. You are going to be asked to go to secondary. The guy at the inspection point normally, and this is when I did the tour, remember that tour, the inspection tour many years ago, back then, probably hasn't changed, 120 seconds to make a decision to inspect or not to inspect. That's the maximum time they're allowed, 2 minutes. Once they go beyond 2 minutes, they have to send you to secondary. So let's assume he sends you to secondary. Then they're going to talk to you and ask you a question. The fact that you've been gone for only 4 months, I would say the chances of you being processed exceeds 90%, especially if you have a home or kept your bank account here. And the piece that you're talking about, which is have been working for a U.S. company abroad, that's a very positive indicator that you
Yeah.
have not abandoned. It is not a negative indicator. So you
Yeah,
want
one of the
to-
things they consider about evaluating long trips, years-long stays outside the United States, and whether they're going to allow you to come back in for something called an SB1 visa, is whether your employment abroad has been with a U.S. company. Essentially, the way they look at it is, no, you're doing sort of U.S. business abroad. You're going there as a representative of the United States. You haven't abandoned your permanent residence. You're just being a U.S. permanent resident representing the interests of a U.S. company abroad.
So if the question asks what you've been doing outside for the last 4 months, my answer I would suggest that you answer the following. I have been working abroad for a U.S. company.
Yeah.
And you want to stress that and be ready to show paychecks showing that you're working for a U.S. company.
Yeah.
Temporarily working for a U.S., especially if you've been working for a long time for this company in the U.S. and they send you out on a mission or a specific assignment, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, it's worth noting that generally trips of less than 6 months are less likely to draw scrutiny. But again, that's not a guarantee, and they can raise the question of abandonment of permanent residence at any time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good question,
Sneha. Yes. So looks like there's a question here from Ravi Kiran, and here it goes. I have an EAD AP combo cards from. I have 2 EAD combo cards from, 1, a primary I-485, and 2, I'm a derivative of my spouse's I-485. Does it matter which EAD/AP card I use for travel and employment?
Brian, do you want to take it?
I'm happy to take that one. The answer is no. It does not matter. I mean, I think the number one thing to understand is when you use that EAD or AP combo card, you got to understand that you're abandoning your non-immigrant status, your H, your L, etc. But ultimately, and that puts you in a period of stay authorized by the Attorney General, stay authorized during the pendency of your green card case. It doesn't really matter which one. I think that people are worried that is it going to tie me to one case or another? And the answer is no. Does it limit me to getting my green card through one case or another? And no.
I'm gonna change Ravi's question and add to it for you, Brian.
Sure.
Let's expand on that question because that's a great question. First of all, my preference is to use the advanced parole where you feel is the most stable employment. That's my preference. Now, let's assume Ravi used the number 2 derivative of my spouse I-485 advanced parole, right?
Mm-hmm.
The question, God forbid that employment is terminated or the adjustment status is denied. And now the question is, does the fact that he has an advanced parole from the other I-485 will save him and allow him to stay in the U.S. or not? Or does he have to leave the country and re-enter?
No, I think he's just fine. He's been paroled into the country. What's your take on that, Sam?
He's paroled to the country pursuant to an adjustment of status, though.
Yeah, and he still is paroled into the country pursuant to an adjustment of status.
But that adjustment status is denied.
He has another adjustment of status pending.
But he's not paroled to that other adjustment status.
That's a compelling case.
It's a compelling case. So I am not saying that sometimes I ask the question I don't have the answer for 100%. I would say it may have to force the person to leave and come back again.
I would agree with that. We talk about being conservative. If that was the hand I was dealt, if that's the client I'm defending, I would defend the fact that I'm paroled and I don't care that one adjustment is denied. I have another adjustment pending. But you're right. There's something to be said for.
The other adjustment gives you an advanced parole to re-enter on that adjustment which you have not used. Mm-hmm. So in that case, I'm going to have to say potentially I might want to travel and come back again on the other advanced parole to remove any doubt.
That's a fair answer.
Yeah, remove any doubt. So which of the 2 Ravi should be using? The one that Ravi feels is the most stable of the 2 should be using to re-enter the U.S.
I would defend my position, but I always agree with the more conservative choice.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you can make a good argument on the other side, but I would just, if I had to choose between
Why
the
make an
two,
argument when you don't have to?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Good
So,
question from Robbie.
Yeah, I'm going to keep on going. We sort of have some follow-up questions from Sneha Mehta, who is talking about that, 4-month employment abroad. So let's see what they are. So I guess the questions are, will there be issues at my port of entry when I return to the U.S. because I stayed abroad for 4 months? And we sort of talked about those things. Again, a stay abroad of less than 6 months for a U.S. employer are not likely to be questioned. And your 90% of no issues, Sam, is I think a fair analysis of that one.
In my end, I would expand on that a little bit for Sneha. The answer probably also, it depends. What does it depend on? What did you do in the prior trip and how long you've been outside the United States in the prior trip?
Yeah.
So let's assume you spent 4 months, came in, and then left, and spent another 4 months, came in, and then the third 4 months, they stopped you. Yeah,
Sure.
that's a problem. It's a problem. But let's assume, change the facts a little bit, because of course everything we do is fact driven. Let's assume Sneha has a house, has 2 cars, has a bank account, has a 401k, owns the property, and she
Well,
lives here in the United States.
It sounds like you're setting up a scenario where she still has her ties to the U.S. and very clearly still resides there, and it's making it evident that her home is in the U.S. but she's temporarily abroad.
Yes, good point. And therefore, and it's been here in the United States for a long time on short travel here and there, but nothing extended. And then now she makes this 4-month trip working for a U.S. company abroad. On the way back, she got nothing to worry about. This is like it's an easy case. You're solid in this situation.
Okay, so I'm going to keep on going on. This is from Sweet Seller again. So it's when Charlie talked about upgrades to slow EB2 in the final charts. Did he mean interfiling and filing second AOS as a means of upgrade, or did his statement mean other means of upgrade? So those are the only means of upgrade that I can think of. For the record, changing categories. So I think it's leave it at that.
I agree.
Yeah. Here's one from a regular viewer, Centaur. So based on the latest USCIS data on approved EB petitions awaiting visas, EB2 India 296K and EB3 India 62K, would you comment on why EB3 India dates aren't moving? Is this is this because EB3 downgrades weren't accounted for? So why aren't EB3? I mean, those numbers. Less demand for EB3.
Well, I think that's an excellent question. Number one, we don't have the data and the analysis.
Yeah.
Number two, you assume that they're using a logic, and there is a problem with that assumption. As I see things, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's not, I mean, it's a mess. But on the speculation, and if we go down the speculation path, there's a million answer. But on the speculation front, if you remember, when the visas flow down, they flow from EB1 to EB2 to EB3. So there could be a major consumption of EB2s before anything left for the EB3 as a speculation, purely speculation.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess any sort of logic of the Department of State on these things, I mean, the data they get is we've gathered from listening to Charlie over the last couple months of his career was kind of slow and kind of outdated. And I think any sort of logic you expect, any sort of logical action you could expect to see from the visa bulletin, might flow months down the road from when you think it should happen. So, yeah, that's my take.
Yeah.
Here's just one comment. I think this relates to Mansion. This is childcare credit was excluded from the latest offer.
No, it was not excluded. Well, childcare credit is he commenting?
Yes, this is a comment about childcare. It says childcare credit excluded from the latest offer.
Now, I have not dealt with it deeply, but I don't think it was.
Yeah, it was still on the I mean, as I interpret this, well, one, he just walked away from the table. There was a draft of the bill, and he walked away from the table. So
but there's a post, a Washington Post report that he outlined to Biden when they met. He was willing to accept.
And that was not on the list.
No, it was on mentions list, but it was but it was, I don't think it was excluded from the Build Back as it stands right now.
I would agree. Yes, that's my recollection.
But I will look it up as we go to the next question.
Sure. So this is a follow-up for Sweet Seller. How would the February visa bulletin look in your opinion? It's very hard to predict these things, as we discuss. Crystal ball and the Department of State. When we think one thing should happen, the opposite tends to. I think my best guess would be slow minimal movement is that. Don't expect any great leaps forward until until there's one, a visa recapture bill, or two, the next fiscal year is my take on it.
The thing we can reasonably predict, I think, is USCIS shifting to the final action date.
Yes.
From the filing date.
Agreed.
Yes. Now,
okay.
The child tax credit was, here I'm looking at, it's not removed, but it's sunsetting, because the law that was there to provide for child tax credit is expiring.
It has a sunset end date on it, and he doesn't want to extend it. This all sounds very familiar to me.
Yeah, so it's gone. He said, I don't want to renew. I don't want to put it there yet. I have not read this deeply on the child tax credit, but I think it's just it's a tax credit for children, but I'm not sure why is that. I think it's just a dollar and cents issue.
Anything I heard from Good Joe Manchin was that he was very concerned about, again, inflation. He mentioned three things in his statement there on that interview on Fox News that we played the clip of: inflation, debt, and COVID, all really financial issues that were really concerning him.
Yeah.
Going to keep it moving here on the questions. Then here's one from MKC. So looking to upgrade amended EB3 I-140 back to EB2. My priority date may become current in a month in the EB2 category. Do you suggest apply in premium processing? So you may not be able to, is the short answer. The USCIS has a policy by which they will not accept a premium processing request on a case based upon a previously submitted labor certification, the perm filing.
In the immediate future.
Yeah. However, there's one interesting question in my mind, Sam. Now that they've switched to electronic labor certifications, will they abandon that policy?
Well, you can definitely. A couple of clarifications for MKC.
Yeah.
One, throw in the check and request it. So
it's true.
Worst case scenario, they're gonna say no. That's the first thing. Secondly, if they don't approve it, try it a month later. Yeah. I think they tell you to wait a month or 2 months.
You make a good point, Sam. You can try premium processing on your I-140 of any type, of your EB2, EB3 I-140 at any time. If they send the premium processing check back to you, they'll come to the letter saying, "Here's your check back. Can't do it right now. Try again in 30 days."
Yes. So and keep trying. But that's my 25 cents worth on this stuff.
Yeah. And he has a follow-up here. So it is once the upgrade is approved, what will happen to the approved EB3 I-140 and pending I-45 that we applied on the basis of the EB3? What are the cons in applying for an upgrade? So it sounds like you're planning to file another another I-140 and another adjustment of status, and that old set can still stay out there. You don't know for sure when the visa bulletin is going to flip-flop again. And the EB3 will be further ahead again versus EB2, so they can stay there. And basically, those cases are in a race. When whichever one USCIS approves first, you get a green card, and they'll administratively close the other case.
Good one.
Yeah.
Coming on 7 o'clock. Let's take the last maybe 2 more, Brian.
Yeah, sure. Let's sort of spin the wheel. Let's check this one. From Hawaiian Islands. I hope you're in the Hawaiian Islands. It sounds like a nice place to be. I'm 6.5 feet tall. I can never go to the Hawaiian Islands, Sam. Why? Because I would have to fly on an airplane for a ridiculous amount of time, and that's my Brian story for you. My father was taller than me. He used to say, "Oh, Hawaii is the most beautiful place on the planet, except the flight was miserable." But he was almost 7 feet tall.
Wow.
So, anywho,
Why are you so short compared to your dad, Brian?
Yeah, I'm a little guy. So after employment-based I-45 states shows case approved, within how many days does the green card arrive in the mail? After receiving the green card, can I travel to India the next day? So, great question. So, processing times on issuing green cards the actual physical card can vary. I mean, go back maybe about a year, they had massive backlogs, but I think those are largely relieved. Generally speaking, the rule of thumb is you'll see it in about 2 weeks. If you check the status of your green card case online, usually they will update the status to reflect, hey, we sent you a green card, and they'll give you a USPS tracking number so you can track the status of it. So you can basically sit at home and track your mail when you're shining green cards there. And the follow-up question is, can I travel to India the next day? You can travel to anywhere you want the next day, but we spent a lot of time today talking about, abandoning your green card. Travel and do that. Of course you can go to India. Just be cognizant of the fact that, your permanent residence doesn't last forever just because you have a green card. Think about those issues before you start big long-term travel plans.
And the child credit was in the Build Back Better. I'm sorry for looking down as you were talking, but I looked it up for the last.
I'm sure, Sam, you were fully entertained and engaged by what I was saying, despite the fact that I didn't have computerized eye contact.
Yes.
So there's a little follow-up question on this, and we'll make this our last question. So also, if there's a travel ban because of Omicron, then can a U.S. green card holder travel between India and the U.S.? So, great question. It depends on the nature of the travel ban. For example, the U.S. travel policy requires vaccinations, and I believe that applies to.
There's a list of countries. Sorry, there's a list of countries. If you've been to them within 14 years, if you enter the United States, you're banned from the U.S.
14 days. 14 days.
14 days. Would I say 14 years?
14 years.
Well, that's a long time.
Yeah.
14 days. Yeah. So there's a list of countries, and then you'll be subject to that.
It depends on what the travel ban says. These things are done by executive order generally, meaning it's whatever the president says on paper. And somebody might say, well, that's illegal, that's wrong, I'm a permanent resident, I can come back. But if you're stuck outside the United States, well, that's being argued about in courts. You're stuck. One of those things, it's probably a good factor to consider if you're stuck out longer than you'd like to be. If you get stuck out due to a travel ban for a very long time, one of the things, that's probably one of the arguments I as an attorney would make on saying, no, I definitely haven't abandoned my permanent residence. I got stuck out of the country due to a travel ban.
And that's a very, very excellent question if you can document it well. With that, we end today. Thank you guys for listening to us. Hopefully it was helpful. And coming to the end of the year, we'll probably have one more, maybe 2 more before the end of the year. Looking forward to the next one.
Yeah. So thanks, everybody. Have a nice evening, and thanks so much for tuning in. And we'll see you in a week.